o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Mrs. Dixon, would you please give us the pledge of allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Records show that Mr. Van Landite, Mr. Dowden, and Mr. Huntemer are all absent. All the board members are present. Mr. Board, has public notice been given?
Yes, it has.
All the comments per policy 0167.3. Anyone wishing to participate in the period of public comment must be a resident of the Richland School District, a parent or legal guardian of an enrolled district student, or an enrolled district student. The speakers are not permitted to make inflammatory comments, use inappropriate language or gestures, attack specific persons, or make specific persons a subject of the remarks. Please see policy 0167.3 for a complete list of requirements and restrictions. If a person is unable to adhere to these rules, they may be directed to end their comments. Mrs. Coleman? None?
No, I'm sorry, none.
Thank you. On to reports. District Administrator's report.
Okay, just three things to share with the board and public. One, the deadline for declaring candidacy for the spring election for school board has passed. That was on Tuesday at 5 o'clock. We have one candidate for each of the two seats. For our Area 2 West, incumbent Aaron Umbihan will be running again. He will be running unopposed. And for the city seat, again, Mr. Huntemer declared non-candidacy. We have one candidate that will be on the ballot. His name is Brian Miller, representing the city of Richland Center. Candidates that are still interested could run as a write-in candidate, but these would be the two names that would be on our ballot. And because those are the only two names on the ballot, we will not have a primary. And so on April 1st, the spring general election is when the stakeholders will vote on our two school board seats. Second thing is that there will be no regularly scheduled committee meetings for the month of January because, and into the third thing, there will be a number of folks gone at the State Education Convention in Milwaukee next week. It starts on Tuesday the 21st in the evening and then carries through until Friday the 24th. And so we have 4 administrators, myself, Dr. Sherry Johnson, Mr. Joe Sem, and Director of Marketing Communications, Carrie Stoltz, will be going in addition to 2 board members, Mrs. Dickman and Mrs. Troxel will be attending the meeting. So the 6 of us will be down at the state convention next week, again Tuesday the 21st. We'll be leaving around 12:30 and coming back on Friday afternoon. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you.
Student Council report.
Charlie, will you just push the button on the microphone if it's not already on, so it's green? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charlie and I'm a freshman at Richland Center High School. This is my first year being a member of the Student Council and I'm happy to present you with the recent activities and future plans of our Student Council. I'd like to share our accomplishments and upcoming projects with you today. What we've done. One of the highlights of our recent activities was the Christmas events we organized for December 20th. These events include a variety of fun activities such as cookie decorating, trivia, board games, and a movie room. The goal was to provide students with a chance to relax, engage with one another, and celebrate the holiday season before leaving for break. We are pleased to report that the event received excellent feedback, both from the students who participated and from the student council members who helped organize it. In addition to our festive activities, we also held a Christmas Grand fundraiser. This initiative allowed students to send personalized messages, candy, and a stuffed animal ornament to their friends while supporting student council projects. The fundraiser was well received and we were able to raise a bit of money for upcoming plans. Another key event we organized was running the wrestling concessions during the meets. This fundraiser helped us generate additional funds while contributing to the success of school sport events. Like I said previously, this is our biggest fundraiser of the year and involves the whole council. It also allowed us to serve the school community by providing snacks and beverages to fans and participants. As we move into the new year, the Student Council is excited to continue serving our school and community with new plans and projects. Looking ahead, we are planning Valentine's Day activities to celebrate friendship and school spirit. These may include events like a themed fundraiser or a service project to give back to the community. We're working hard to create events that will be both fun and meaningful to our fellow students. Spring is just around the corner, and we are currently in the process of planning spring fundraisers. These fundraisers will help us support ongoing projects and contribute to the funding of school improvement efforts. We are brainstorming ideas for events that will engage the entire school community. The Student Council is also looking for a new school improvement project to take on, especially with the new members who just got accepted for the new year. This year we are hoping to identify a project that will have a lasting positive impact on the school community. We are open to suggestions for both students and faculty on how we can contribute to enhancing our school. In conclusion, I am proud to report that the Student Council has been actively working to improve school life at RCHS through a variety of events, fundraisers, and community building initiatives. We are committed to continuing this work in the future with exciting plans for Valentine's Day, spring fundraisers, and new school improvement projects. We value the support of the school board and appreciate the opportunity to represent the voice of the student body. Any questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Board member reports.
The Building, Property, and Transportation Committee met on Wednesday, December 18th at 6:16 p.m. We went over the referendum projects and update for the historical items, and we recommended to keep them for 1 year, then donate them to the Historical Society. We went over other district maintenance projects, water testing and signage. We went over the student transportation, general routes, that was for information only. We approved the purveyor bid, which will come before the full board tonight for the 24-25 year. We went over the foreign exchange student display, and we recommended to remove the dated board and put up highlights on the flat screens. We did the equipment replacement plan for food service, double fryer at the high school, and a serving line hot unit at the intermediate, which is within the food budget. We went over the capital improvement 10-year plan review. Motion was made and approved, and will move to the full board later tonight. We talked about and approved the partner deck addition, adding a 12 by 24 deck built by the students onto the building. Again, that'll go to full board tonight. We looked at the transportation propane bids for 25-26. We decided we were going to wait until April to check out the cost again, making sure we were getting the best price. The insurance, we went over the insurance audit update. We received information on the yearly process. We talked about possibly having to have a special committee meeting. It may not be needed. We went over a schedule at a glance, and then we adjourned at 7:05 p.m.
The Curriculum Assessment and Public Relations Committee also met on Wednesday, December 16th at 7:30 p.m. in the district office conference room. We discussed the 2025-26 course description guide, which will be seen tonight under consent agenda items. It is available for the public to look at. We talked about policy 5460 and the graduation requirements. We reviewed and discussed goals and priorities. We discussed the possible need for a special committee meeting in January, since our regular committee meeting falls over the Wisconsin Education Convention. And then we concluded by looking at the 2024 school year schedule at a glance and seeing what needed to go under what months and pushed. And that's all we discussed.
The Personnel Negotiations Committee met Wednesday, December 18th. We discussed the estimated pupil projections for the 2025-26 school year. We plan on seeing a slight decrease in the overall student count. And then tied along with that was the initial staffing plans, and with the slight decrease in the student population, we projected we'll be flat on FTE, full-time equivalent for staffing. We also discussed the guidelines for resolution D and E for the salaries for the board members. We also discussed the special committee meeting for the personnel negotiations meeting, which happened earlier this evening. And then the schedule at a glance, which essentially is the same as what Ms. Dickman just announced that. And that was it for that committee. We also had policy committee. We reviewed several policies. The suicide prevention, intervention, post-vention, we pushed that discussion. Policy 8601 with the controlled substance and alcohol policy for employees who transport students. Policy 5851, student events on Wednesdays, Sundays, and holidays. Policy 9700.03 with the naming rights for the property. And then we also discussed the need for a special committee meeting, which we decided we did not need to have. And schedule a glance to just set things up for the remainder of the school year. Then we had Richland School District Foundation Board. We met on December 16th and went over several items that were pretty much to prepare us for our annual meeting, which happened on January 6th. The homecoming date for 2025 is October 13th. Monetary Awards Scholarship Night is set for Wednesday, May 28th. And that was it for that meeting. Then the meeting on the 26th, or on the 1st, excuse me, of January. With the annual meeting, we had the election of officers, and the folks that have been president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer are the same. That's what we've had. So Chris Shannon, Greg Openauer, Jamie Warren, and Jamie Bruckner. We reviewed any bylaw changes that were needed to be made. We also went over the budget and approved that for the upcoming calendar year, which is different than the school year. And then we reviewed the 2025 calendar of events to make sure that we were able to be aligned with timing for the various events with outstanding alumni, scholarship nights, and such. So there were discussions on we do still have 2 openings for the board, and one of those openings we need to elect an IT official, which is a new position. So if anyone is interested in being on the Richland School District Foundation, please let any one of us that are on that committee know.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the prior meeting minutes of December 9th, 2024?
So move.
Motion made by Mr. Billing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second, Mrs. Dickman. Discussion? Mr. Billing?
Aye.
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 Aye. On to financial items, approval of statement of cash and invoices.
I move we approve the statement of cash dated January 6th, 2025, and approve Community First Bank General Checking Account checks number 86872-86951, ACH number 242-502-390 through 242-500-2569, and EFT 2024-00068 through 2024-00077, for a net total of $1,207,130.37. This is for the purpose of general operating costs of the district.
Motion was made by Mr. Billing. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Troxel. Mr. Bosworth, anything you want to point out or add?
Yeah, I would point out just a couple of things tonight. Number one is we only had 1 board meeting in December, so the number of invoices you're seeing are larger than usual, to make up for that missed meeting. And then 3 expenses to point out. The first one on the list of invoices, the very first one, says purchasing something for St. Mary's School. We receive federal grants, ESEA and IDEA, and private schools, if they choose, can receive a small portion of those as a formula. their administrators would work with Mr. Josem and Mrs. Johnson to figure out how to spend those dollars, and then we would help secure the things that they're looking for. There's guidelines. That's just one example there, you would see that, but then you may have wondered why that expense was. The second thing, on page 2, about halfway down there, you'll see an expense that says wrestling invite startup cash, $2,000. What is that for? That's to supply the concession boxes and admission boxes, just to make sure we have some change to give to people as they're coming in. And when the event is all over, we collect the profits, and then that $2,000 goes back into the bank. And then finally, on page 4, about halfway down there, you see a tech ed laser for $30,000. You may remember last year, some of the members of the high school staff wrote a grant and received that grant to purchase this laser engraver for $30,000. So we have that now. That's it.
Thank you. Discussion? Mrs. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Right, Mrs. Coleman, consent agenda items?
Motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented. Motion to accept the donation of money valued at approximately $900 from the City of Richland Center Utilities for delinquent food service accounts. Motion to accept the donation of money valued at approximately $500 from Quick Trip Incorporated for the use of supporting the Richland Center Intermediate Greenhouse. Motion to accept the donation of money valued at approximately $800 from the Richland School District Foundation. Motion to accept the donation of a gift card valued at approximately $100 from Neighbors Helping Neighbors, Quick Trip Incorporated. Motion to accept the donation of coffee pods, calendars, and other baked goods valued at approximately $40 from Community First Bank. Motion to approve the Richland Center High School course description guide as presented. Motion to approve the recommendation for the long-range capital improvement plan as presented. Motion to approve 4 open enrollment in applications and 1 open enrollment out application for the 2024-25 school year as presented.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda items?
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by Mrs. Troxel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman. Discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 Right. On behalf of the Board of Education, I would like to thank City Utilities of Richland Center, Quick Trip Incorporated, Richland School District Foundation, the Neighbors Helping Neighbors, Quick Trip Incorporated, and Community First Bank for their generous donations. Is there a motion to approve modified agenda?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bailey, and I'll second it. Discussion? Aye.
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 All right, on to information discussion items, district transfers and vacancies.
Okay, so you'll see that we just have one opening right now that was reposted, and that is for someone to assist when we have to transport students to the facilities. And so we're looking for that up to 5.5-hour position, and that is the only vacancy that we have open. Of course, as always, all of the already approved or hired transfers are listed in the charts below. Any questions from the board regarding any of those? Thank you.
All right, on to resolutions for WASB Delegate Assembly at State Convention.
Yeah, so I mentioned earlier that Mrs. Troxel and Mrs. Dickman would be attending the state convention along with some administrators. One of the things that happens at the state convention is that WASB has a delegate assembly. Every school district that's a member of WASB gets a vote in their at their delegate assembly. Our board, way back last April, I guess it was, at a reorganization meeting, chose and elected Mrs. Dickman to represent the school board at that delegate assembly. The delegate assembly is simply the resolutions that the WASB will adhere to. It does not mean that they become law. It does not mean that they become policy. in any way. It simply means that those are the resolutions that the WSAB will support on behalf of its members. And so there are a few resolutions that Mrs. Dickman will be voicing her vote on behalf of the Richland School District. I would suggest that the board take some time here and read the PDF labeled Report to the Membership on Proposed Resolutions. This is a 6-page document that provides the resolution title and the proposed amendment and the reason or rationale for the proposed amendment. Okay, and then individually, as board members, if you feel strongly about how Mrs. Dickman should consider voting, you should relay those thoughts to Mrs. Dickman before we leave on the 21st. There's a pre-delegate assembly meeting on Tuesday night, and then the actual delegate assembly is Wednesday afternoon. So individually as board members, you may relay your thoughts on any or all of the resolutions to Mrs. Dickman. Ultimately, though, the board has elected Mrs. Dickman to vote on behalf of the Richland School District, but your input may weigh in on that. So that's really what this is for, is to let you know those are the resolutions that she will be voting on, and between now and next Tuesday afternoon, read those over, and if you have any questions about the resolution, I can try to help answer that. I'm sure she can as well, but if you have a feeling about, or a strong feeling about how you would like her to vote, or things to think about, certainly relay that onto her. She would be the only one that would be present on behalf of the Richland School District at that assembly. Any questions? Mrs. Dickman, any questions from you regarding that? Okay. Mrs. Troxel, I believe you did it last year, so, okay. All right, thank you.
Right, on to action items, food service purveyor bid.
Okay, so this was one of the committee reports that mentioned that, I believe at the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee, that this was a food purveyor bid. Normally something that we would probably put on consent, but one board member would have to abstain, and so it's on for action. The recommendation is that for the 2025-26 school year, that we use Cisco Foods as a food purveyor for the Richland School District. We may use other suppliers as needed, but they would be our main purveyor contractor.
So I'll make the motion to approve the recommendation for Cisco Foods as food purveyor for RSD for the 2025-26 school year. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Troxel. Discussion? Mr. Mailing?
Abstain.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. The deck addition to the partner school.
Okay, so this also went to the Buildings, Property, and Transportation Committee. Our students at our partner school are looking to build a deck, 12 by 24, on the south side the east side of the building. This has been kind of a cool project. Our partner school kids have actually gone down to meet with the city officials, obtaining required permits. Everything is ready to go. We brought this to the Buildings and Property Committee, and while technically it doesn't need board approval, we did want to bring it to the board for approval, one, so that the board could be aware of this, but also our public aware that our students down at the partner school are looking to build a deck, and to they're going through all that process, and it's going to be kind of a neat experience for them. So Mr. Jones is here as well if you had any specific questions about the deck, but we'll make sure it meets code and everything is taken care of. We're still working on getting pricing for lumber and things like that. Buildings and Property, if you have anything to add.
I would just like to say that I really want to commend the students. They really put a lot of thought into it, and really drew everything out, and they took the initiative to go to the city, and I mean, they really followed from A to Z. They did a wonderful job, so I just want to commend them and their instructor as well.
What is the timeline for completion? Because obviously if you're putting posts in the ground at this, it's 0 degrees outside, is this something that's happening in the spring?
They're gonna raise them up. They're gonna get most of it with donations. Not as very bad, folks.
And how close does that put us to the property line?
We're within the, whatever limit the city has, the city building inspector looked at, so we'll be within,
Thank you.
I think it's 8-foot variance, but I'm not sure.
What's the proposed use for the deck? Like, it's just recreation?
Physical admin, can you help with that? Do you know what they're hoping to do with?
Not 100% sure. I can certainly find out for you.
Well, I'm just hoping it's barbecuing, which they will. Show their gratitude to the board by inviting us over.
They do have a grill there.
Well, there you go.
I'll read what they have on here for the reason for the project.
Oh,
Experience of building a deck from start to finish, and using of the deck for years to come.
there you go.
So,
The express purpose of
Vital.
barbecuing.
For the board.
Is there a motion to approve the deck addition at Partner School as presented?
so moved.
Motion made by Mr. Bailey, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman, discussion. Mrs. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Revisions to policy 9500.02, naming of district facilities.
Okay, so you may remember several months back, not really part of the new proposal or Neola, but one of the new policies that the policy committee worked on was the naming of district facilities. As we have worked through the sponsorship guidelines and how that would look, there were a few revisions that are being recommended to change to that policy. Those revisions, if you click on the PDF themselves, those revisions are outlined. One, that they feel that if they're going to be naming it after someone who has recently served the Richland School District, that at least 5 years pass instead of 1 year, to make sure that there's enough time to the new students, that name has withheld the test of time, maybe for lack of a better term. So that's one change. And then the second change there on the second page of the policy is outlining the approval process a little more detailed. There's really 4 steps that any person of the public that is looking to name a facility would have to jump through. It would first, I don't mean in a cumbersome way, but just to make sure that it's all covered, that it would first go to a committee, and then it would be a presentation to the board without action, but just a presentation. And then at a subsequent meeting, very similar to what we would do with new policy, we would allow the public to voice their concern and or voice their opinion at a public hearing, and then finish with a board vote. One note, just slightly changed from the committee. In number 4 there on the approval process, in consulting with our general legal counsel, it's illegal for a board to have requirements that are stronger than what state statutes allow for. The hope was that it would receive at least 2/3 of majority of the full board, and so Mr. Strang has advised us to put in the wording or the maximum voting requirements allowed by law, whichever is less. So if a particular item it only requires by state statutes majority of a quorum, then that would allow us to be legal, okay? But if the state statutes would allow us to have 2/3 majority of the full board, then that would be legal as well. So just making the policy committee aware of that. Otherwise, if there's anything the policy committee would like to add, please chime in.
Is there a motion to approve the revisions to policy 9500.02, naming of district facilities?
I'll make the motion.
Motion made by Ms. Troxel, I'll second it. Discussion? Ms. Troxel?
Aye.
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 On to limits for incoming open enrollment students, 2025-26.
Okay, so this is an item that the board has seen every January. Every school district in the state of Wisconsin would act on this in January. This is the meeting that we'll do this at. Essentially sets limits on special education space constraints or space constraints for open enrolled students choosing our district. We have typically had limits on those. We're proposing limits again. In case you haven't looked at this or if you have a printed copy, I did add just a little disclaimer here this afternoon that's in the online version, but maybe not in the printed version. And it just says, I'll just read it real quick. Space restrictions are valid through the official pupil count in September. So the ones that we do today will be valid through our third Friday count next September. In addition, because of the fluid nature of students in our community coming and leaving, space may be available at any given time. This approval allows the administration to determine if there is space available in the areas the open enrolled student needs. Okay, so if we have students that, if we set the limits and we have students that leave our district, move out of our district, maybe no longer have that space restriction, or in their IEP, that may open up a space, okay, for a particular need, whether it be speech or OTPT or whatever, maybe even in our ID classroom. If the space is available, it allows us, but as it sits just today, if our caseloads are maxed out, we wouldn't allow any extra students to enter in an open enrollment status. Mr. Josem, you wrote the memo, I added that, anything that you'd like to add?
No, that was a good addition and a good summary. And again, this is just for open enrolled students, so those who are listening, this does not go with our own resident students. So again, just because we have a cap doesn't mean our resident students can't qualify for a special ed program.
It also, yep, to piggyback off that, it also, any students that are open enroll in, they only have to apply when they change buildings, okay? So if a student is already open enrolled in, they don't get booted out or anything like that. It just allows us to have some restrictions, especially in those areas where we're really, really maxed out right now, to not have to accept another student, even though we want to accept as many as we can.
Just for clarification, Mr. Josem, so if there's a family that moves into the district and we're at capacity before that child moves in, that family moves in, we'll still accept that child into the program because they are now residents, correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Correct.
I'll make the motion to approve the open enrollment limits for the 2025-26 school year as presented. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman. Discussion? Aye.
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 All right. On to resolution establishing parameters for the sale of not to exceed $12,160,000 general obligation promissory notes.
Okay, so you may remember after the capital referendum passed last April, Kevin Mullen from Baird, who's going to be, is joining us via Zoom, he talked through the first part of our financing where we borrowed $15 million and then said that we would be coming back for the remainder, the $12,160,000. That's what we're looking at doing tonight. Before I turn it over to Mr. Mullen, Mr. Bosworth, do you have anything you need to preface this with or anything like that? Okay, perfect. Then we'll turn it over to Mr. Mullen on Zoom. Ms. Stoltz, if maybe you could make him speaker view, and then Kevin, welcome.
Great, well, thanks everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to join you tonight virtually. Can you hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Great, I'm going to share my screen, and as Mr. Board had indicated, this resolution, the parameters resolution, is really the board action that's required to start the process of borrowing that second leg of the financing. And so I wanted to have the opportunity to discuss that with you. I'm just going to share the screen with you, and you can see that all, I hope. As was mentioned, the district borrowed $15 million back in the spring, late summer of 2024. And then in October, you anticipated the borrowing of the second leg along with the first leg of the financing. And both payments were included in the tax bill that went out to your public in December. And so tax bills that people are receiving right now include the operational increase as well as the levy for both pieces of debt. I think that's important to understand. So tonight what I wanted to do was just to give you the background for this second leg of the financing. Wanted to give you a brief interest rate update, refresh with you the plan around the overall plan of finance and kind of give you an update as to where we're at, and then give you just an overview of what the discussion and action item is for tonight. So first, let's just look at interest rates. And you may recall this chart from the last time that we discussed the borrowing, but this chart is the average interest rate for a 20-year borrowing for a AAA rated basket of bonds for the last 30 years. So it's basically the 20-year borrowing rate for that highest rating of bonds over the last 20 years. And the reason that we like to show you this is because it illustrates two things. One, gives you a general sense as to where interest rates are presently, but more importantly, I think it puts it into historical context and gives you an idea that we're borrowing at a point in time where interest rates are still at a very average interest rate level. If you were just to compare the window from 2020 until now, you would obviously say interest rates have increased dramatically, which is true, but they're coming off of 2020 rates that were at all-time historical lows. And so if we look back 30 years, you can see that we are in a very good and average interest rate environment, which should give you comfort moving forward. The box on the top is just an indication as to where interest rates are presently, and you can see that they've kind of bounced around over the last year in a pretty tight window, but we're expecting that interest rates would be for an A1 rated borrower like yourself to be in the mid 4% range-ish in that general area. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. So that was one piece of information that I wanted to share with you. Also wanted to share this slide with you again. So the blue chart is the borrowing rate chart that we talked about on the previous slide. And then I've added this purple chart, which includes or is a reference to the 2-year treasury. So the 2-year treasury is where you would likely be able to reinvest that money that you've borrowed while you're waiting to use it on capital projects. So one of the reasons that we borrowed in 2 phases was to take advantage of the $15 million small issuer exemption, which gives you 3 years to take that borrowed money and earn arbitrage income. So arbitrage income is really any opportunity to earn more than what you've borrowed at. And you'll notice in this chart that there are really basically 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, where that interest rate has been higher than the borrowing rate. And we're presently in one of those opportunities, and we certainly were even to a greater magnitude when you borrowed earlier in the spring. So we feel like that's really given the school district a great opportunity to borrow the money at relatively good and stable interest rates, and then reinvest it while you're waiting for the projects to be constructed and earn some money to be put back into the project. And we feel like that's been very, very good for you. Any questions on those 2 charts before I move on? So, I wanted to just review with you your original financing plan considerations and where we're at relative to that now that we're getting ready to borrow for the second leg. So our goals for the borrowing were basically 4-fold. The first was when we went to the public, we said that the combined referendum was going to increase the tax rate by about $1.10 per thousand. Going from the 2023-24 budget to the budget that was approved in October. So we wanted to make sure we stayed within that guideline for sure. We also wanted to give you the best opportunity to minimize your interest rate cost and interest rate risk, flexibility in terms of when you enter the market, but also the opportunity to maximize the investment income that you're going to have the potential to make while you're waiting to use those dollars, referring back to the chart that I talked about earlier. We feel like we've done a really good job of getting you in the spot to do that. So just to give you some context in terms of your overall tax rate increase, you may recall back in October when you approved your budget that your year-over-year increase in the levy was roughly $325,000 between last year and the budget that is being collected on right now. So if you were to put that in terms of a tax increase, that tax increase in last year's value was 31 cents per thousand, per thousand. So on a $100,000 home, that was a $31 increase. Certainly well within that $1.10 that you had estimated. You also had some very significant growth in value behind that, so the tax rate even came down more than that. Your tax rate year over year went down, but obviously your levy increased a little bit. So very comfortable that we're within that $1.10 increase. Moving forward, we're going to be going back to Moody's to get what we very likely assume will be an affirmation of your A1 credit rating. And so that's the assumption that we've moved forward with right now. We know that you've already borrowed that the $15 million in last year's budget. And phase 2, we're getting ready to borrow the balance, $12,160,000. Looking at that and based on the growth that we know is there, we feel super confident that we're going to continue to be well within that budget. So this is probably horrible to look at on the screen above. I know John had shared with you this report in your board docs, but what this is just a summary, a spreadsheet that puts together the components of the referendum and these pieces to give you a sense as to where we're at, both in terms of borrowing costs based on where we projected, as well as tax impact. So reading left to right, the levy year is the year that you build the levy. The year due is the year that the actual payments are due. The next column is what you have outstanding for existing debt prior to this referendum. And then we included what was the operational increase that was approved by voters. So beginning in 2024-25, 2.3 and increasing that to $2.6 million in the year 2028. And then we just assumed that it would stay, $2.6 million, that it would stay constant moving forward. And then we added the phase 1 borrowing, which was borrowed at a net interest cost of 4.40%. And you'll notice that those payments were primarily the back end of the borrowing curve. So where interest rates were likely going to be the highest, we locked those in back in June. And then that orange phase is the second phase that we're talking about right now. And we've assumed that that borrowing would be roughly at an all-in interest cost of 4.41%, so still in the neighborhood of where it was before. And that will combine, give you the total cost of that overall referendum, both operational costs plus borrowing. And you'll see you've gone from 3.5 to 4.5, and then kind of started to settle into a spot where you're at $4.8 million. So what this doesn't take into account, and I don't want to get too much into the detail of it, but you also had your base revenue included more state aid last year than was expected. So this is slightly exaggerated in terms of what that impact would be. But I think what's most important, if you look in the bottom right-hand box down here, you can see what the original referendum cost estimate was at 5.28%, based on where we're currently estimating it at 4.41%. That's going to result in a reduction in interest cost over that borrowing based on where we thought it would be of almost $4 million over that period of time, which certainly is going to reduce the impact further. So we just feel really good that we're still well within that constraint. We have the ability to hit this year's payment exactly where your budget is, so we know we're not going to go over what was included in this year's budget, and we also feel very comfortable that we're going to be well within the constraints of what we thought the borrowing would come in at moving forward. A lot of information, but any questions on that part of the presentation?
Not seeing any, Kevin.
Okay. So the parameters resolution that you have before you is similar to the parameters resolution that was approved at the prior borrowing. And what this does is it gives the authority to the board president and the district administrator to approve a borrowing between now and, probably your next couple, your next board meeting, more than likely, depending on when we can get to Moody's with the rating. But once that bond issue is approved, as long as that bond issue is within the parameters, you have the flexibility to enter the bond market when you're ready and when the market feels right. And so that parameters resolution, it states that the amount is not to exceed the $12,160,000, gives the authority to the board president and district administrator to sign off on that loan as long as it's within the parameters that you're approving. The not to exceed interest rate is purposely conservative, but we put that in at 5.25%. We expect that to be in the mid 4% range. We've described the maturity schedule, meaning the repayments as they were described earlier, but we have given the ability to you to increase or decrease the borrowing amount by up to $2 million within any one of those repayment sections. And I want to just point to that. That's something that your business manager, your district administrator, and I will be discussing in terms of whether that makes sense. I'm going to roll back one page here. So you see this one borrowing amount maturity that's $2,190,000 that's kind of out here on its own. State law allows you to borrow for a maximum term of up to 20 years. And so, as you may recall, we split this borrowing into two 20-year cycles over 2 calendar years to give you a full 21 years to repay that loan. This amount, the $2,190,000, could be rolled up and in essence ballooned in the year 2036, depending on where interest rates are. If that makes sense, that's something that we'll talk to your district administrator and business manager about, and whether or not that strategy would make sense. The reason that you might consider doing that is that interest rate would be lower, and if you have a sense that you're going to be continuing to prepay loans as the opportunity presents itself, you might as well take advantage of that interest rate if it's lower. But that's really something that it will be kind of a game time decision as we get more information based on the market when we get ready to price. But that's why that not to exceed or maturity can increase or decrease by up to $2.2 million. That just gives us the ability to move that up. So I just wanted to describe that a little bit. Any questions on that?
Not seeing any.
Okay. Well, thank you, and I'm sure this is a lot to absorb. If you have questions after you've had a chance to really think about it, certainly feel free to pass those questions along to the district administrator or finance or business manager, and they can forward them along to me. But thank you, appreciate your attention.
Kevin, I do have one just general question, just to make sure. This is not a vote that would require 2/3 of the full board, is it? Because we only have 4 of our 7 here.
I don't believe so. That would still be a quorum of the board, correct? 4 of the 7.
This, we have a quorum here.
That's correct. Thank you.
Make the motion to approve the resolution of the sale of $100,000 general obligation promissory notes as presented. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mrs. Dickman. Any other discussion, questions? Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. I'll make a
Thank you,
motion
everyone.
to move into closed session pursuant under statutes 19.851C and/or F as appropriate to consider employment, promotion, and compensation of employees for purposes of discussing individual employee hiring and administrator evaluations, and 19.851G as appropriate to discuss legal advice and strategies, and Wisconsin statutes 118.125 to discuss student open enrollment applications and individual pupil information related to those applications. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Dickman. Discussion? Sorry, Ms. Troxel. Correction. Mrs. Dickman?
Aye.
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 Thank you.